Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret blueprint that shapes every single language class you've ever taken. We're going to see how the roles of the teacher and the learner are the real magic behind why some classes click and, well, why some just don't.
So, does this sound familiar? You take one class and it's all about endless grammar drills, super rigid, super rule-based. But then the next one feels totally different. It's like a free-flowing chat with friends. You probably just thought, oh, it's the teacher's style, right? Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. It is all by design. The thing is, every good language class is built on a blueprint. It's a plan, a whole philosophy that decides who's doing what and why. And at the very heart of that blueprint, you've got two main players, the teacher and the learner. And believe me, how we see their roles has changed a lot. Okay, so let's start with the person who's usually at the front of the room. The teacher's role has gone through this huge transformation. It's not just one single dominant job anymore. It's way more flexible and, honestly, way more supportive. This slide just nails the shift perfectly. Over on the left, you've got the controller. This is that classic sage on the stage who dictates absolutely everything. But look to the right. The modern way of thinking is all about the facilitator, someone who's more of a guide on the side, you know? They create the space for students to explore and hit their own goals.
So, what does a facilitator actually do? Well, you can see right here. It means turning the classroom into a place where people are actually talking to each other, in pairs or groups. The teacher isn't just lecturing, they're walking around, acting as a resource you can call on when you need them. And here's the absolute game changer. This one little shift can massively, and I mean massively, increase the amount of time students are the ones actually speaking the language.
But here's the catch. This only works if the other side of the equation changes too. So, let's talk about the learner. When the teacher stops being the controller, guess what? The student has to step up and take on a much more active role.
And that brings us to this really big idea in language teaching, learner autonomy. The whole point is to empower students to basically become the CEOs of their own learning journey. They're the ones tracking their progress, figuring out grammar rules from context, and just taking real ownership of the whole process.
Of course, a good blueprint knows that learners aren't all cut from the same cloth. As you see here, age is a huge deal. Then you've got different learning styles. Some people really need those clear rules, while others just want to talk and figure it out. And you can't forget motivation. Are you learning because you have to for a test, or because you just love it? A great facilitator knows how to tweak the blueprint to work for everyone in the room.
So we've got these changing roles for the teacher and the learner. Now let's look at how they come together in two of the most popular blueprints you'll find for a language lesson.
First up, we've got the classic, the PPP model. It stands for Presentation, Practice, and Production. This one is very teacher-led. The teacher presents a new piece of grammar. Then the students practice it with some controlled exercises. And finally, they try to produce it on their own more freely. It's very neat, very orderly. A perfect example of the teacher as the controller.
And then you've got the challenger, task-based learning or TBL. And this model basically flips PPP right on its head. Here, the lesson kicks off with a real, meaningful task, like, say, planning a trip together. Students just dive in, using whatever language they've got to get the job done. The grammar and vocabulary? That comes after, when the class looks back and talks about the language they needed. It can feel a bit messy, for sure, but it's totally student-driven. Really, the whole philosophy behind task-based learning can be summed up by this one quote. The core belief is that if you just give learners a real reason to communicate, the language part will kind of take care of itself. The learning just happens naturally, because it has a purpose.
Now, a lesson's blueprint doesn't just decide the activities you do. It also has a huge say in how and when a teacher gives you feedback and corrections.
The big difference here is between accuracy and fluency. See, when the goal of an activity is accuracy, getting the grammar just right, the teacher's going to jump in with immediate detailed corrections. But when the goal is fluency, just getting your message across, a good teacher will actually back off because constantly interrupting would just kill the flow of communication.
And this whole idea extends all the way to how you're tested. A blueprint that's all about grammar rules will probably use indirect tests, like a multiple-choice quiz. They're testing what you know about the language. But a blueprint focused on communication, that's going to use direct tests, like an interview or a role play, because it's testing if you can actually use the language when it counts. So, after all that, which one's the best? Is it PPP or TBL? The controller or the facilitator?
Well, as you might have guessed, the answer isn't quite that simple.
The truth is, the very best teachers don't just stick to one blueprint. They use something called pragmatic eclecticism. It sounds fancy, but all it really means is that they mix and match. They pick the right tool from the right blueprint to fit the students they have and the goal of that particular lesson. Because at the end of the day, that's the real secret. A great language class is one where everything is lined up just right. The teacher's role, the activities you're doing, and what the students actually need, it all has to be pointing in the exact same direction, towards one clear goal.
And that leaves us with this final big question. What is the real goal here? Is it to have perfect grammar, or is it to have confident communication? There isn't one right answer for everybody. But the blueprint a teacher chooses, that is what makes the decision.